I used to be that guy, the one who did everything right. Perfect dates, perfect texts, perfect effort. But she kept pulling away until I realized something that changed everything. Picture this. You're dating an absolutely gorgeous person. They're smart, funny, and every person in the room turns to look at them when they walk by. You're treating them like the prize they are, buying flowers, taking them on expensive dates, texting good morning every single day. You're being the perfect partner your parents raised you to be. But here's what's happening behind the scenes. They're slowly losing interest in you, and you have no idea why. What I'm about to tell you will completely shatter everything you think you know about relationships and attraction. The uncomfortable truth that 97% of people refuse to accept is this. For genuine love, desire, and loyalty to exist, your partner must never feel completely secure in your affection. They must always feel like they're reaching upward to deserve your attention. Now, before you close this thinking I'm advocating manipulation, let me be clear. I'm not talking about being cruel or abusive. I'm talking about understanding the psychological mechanisms that drive attraction at the deepest level. And if you stick with me for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to reveal the exact psychology behind why people lose interest in partners who treat them well. And more importantly, how to use this knowledge to create the kind of deep, lasting attraction that most people only dream of. This is going to be one of the most important explorations of relationship psychology you'll encounter. So pay attention. Let's start with the first golden rule. People are biologically programmed to seek partners with higher perceived value than themselves. This isn't something they consciously decide. It's hardwired into their psychology after millions of years of evolution. Back in our ancestral environment, people who chose partners with superior resources, strength, and social status were more likely to survive and raise healthy offspring. The people who fell for someone just because they were kind and attentive, their genetic line died out because that partner couldn't protect them from danger or provide during harsh times. This biological programming is still active in every person's subconscious mind today. Even though we live in modern times with safety nets and convenience, their brain is still operating on ancient software. When someone perceives that a partner's value is lower than or equal to their own, their attraction circuitry literally shuts down. For hundreds of thousands of years, people had to be extremely selective about their mating choices because vulnerability and dependency made them weak. Someone who chose poorly could literally suffer consequences. This created intense selection pressure to be attracted only to those who demonstrated superior status and resources. These ancient programs are still running in the background of every interaction you have. When you act needy, desperate, or overly accommodating, you're sending signals that would have indicated weakness to our ancestors. Their subconscious receives these signals and responds by reducing attraction. This brings us to the concept of sexual market value, or SMV. Think of relationships like a marketplace where everyone has a certain value based on their attractiveness, resources, personality, and social status. The reality is that people are only genuinely attracted to those whose SMV they perceive as higher than their own. Here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think SMV is about your job, your car, your appearance, or your height. While these factors matter, they're not the primary drivers of attraction. A person's perception of your SMV is determined much more by how you carry yourself, how you interact with them, and most importantly, how much you seem to need their validation. I once knew a guy who was a successful lawyer, drove a BMW, and was in great shape. He would wine and dine women at expensive restaurants, shower them with compliments, and make himself available whenever they called. Despite having all the external markers of high value, women would consistently lose interest in him after a few weeks. Compare that to another guy I knew who was a bartender, lived in a modest apartment but had an abundance mindset. He would take women to casual coffee shops, playfully tease them, and never seemed bothered if they didn't respond to his texts immediately. Women would become obsessed with him, constantly trying to win his approval and attention. The difference? The second guy understood that perceived value is more powerful than actual value. He carried himself like a man with options, while the first guy's behavior screamed, "Please don't leave me." People are constantly scanning for social cues about your value relative to others. They're looking at how you handle rejection, how you respond to their tests, how you carry yourself in social situations. These behavioral cues matter more than your bank account or your appearance. Here's the second golden rule. The less certain someone is about your interest level, the more mental energy they invest in thinking about you. This is basic psychology. We value what we're uncertain about and take for granted what we're sure of. When you immediately show your hand by being overly available, constantly texting, and making it obvious that you're completely smitten, you remove all mystery and challenge from the equation. They no longer have to work for your attention because you're freely giving it away. But when you maintain some level of uncertainty about your feelings, something magical happens. Their mind starts racing with questions. Does he really like me? Why didn't she text me back? What are they doing right now? This mental occupation is the foundation of attraction. Let me paint you a picture of how this works in practice. You meet someone at a social event, have a great conversation and exchange numbers. The typical person would text the next day saying something like, "Hey, I had such an amazing time talking to you last night. You're incredible. When can I see you again?" The person who understands this principle waits 3 days, then sends a simple text, "Coffee Tuesday at 3. No excessive enthusiasm, no validation seeking, just a clear invitation that demonstrates interest without desperation. Here's the psychological principle at work. Humans are naturally drawn to intermittent reinforcement. When we receive consistent, predictable rewards, we quickly adapt and lose interest. But when rewards are unpredictable, we become psychologically hooked. Attention operates on the same principle. When you give it consistently and predictably, they adapt to it and lose interest. When you give it intermittently and unpredictably, they become psychologically hooked on getting more of it. Think of your attention and approval as a currency. Like any currency, its value is determined by scarcity. When you give your validation too freely, it becomes worthless. When you make it something that must be earned, it becomes precious. Most people make the fatal mistake of front-loading all their validation. They compliment constantly, agree with everything, and make it clear that their partner is the most amazing person they've ever met. What they don't realize is that they just spent their entire emotional budget in the first week. People are incredibly skilled at reading your level of investment through your behavior. They don't need you to announce your feelings. They can see it in how quickly you respond to their texts, how you light up when they walk into the room, how you rearrange your schedule to accommodate their whims. Here's what you need to understand. People want to feel special, but they want to earn that feeling. When you give it away for free, it loses all meaning. When they have to work for your approval, suddenly it becomes worth something. I knew someone who was dating a model, absolutely stunning, used to men falling over themselves. Instead of showering them with compliments about their looks like every other person, he would occasionally acknowledge their intelligence when they said something insightful, or praise their sense of humor when they made him laugh. The key was that his validation was conditional on their behavior, not just their existence. They had to earn his approval through their actions, which made it infinitely more valuable than the empty compliments they received from everyone else. One of the fastest ways to destroy attraction is to become predictable. When they know exactly how you'll respond to everything they do, when they can predict your schedule down to the minute, when you become a known quantity, their interest will inevitably fade. This is why so many relationships start passionate and exciting but gradually become boring and routine. The person in their effort to be a good partner becomes utterly predictable. They call at the same time every day, take them to the same types of places, respond the same way every time. Predictability signals to their subconscious that they've completely figured you out, which means they no longer need to invest mental energy in understanding you. And when they stop investing mental energy, they stop feeling attracted to you. This is why the bad boy or bad girl archetype is so powerful. It's not that people are attracted to mistreatment, they're attracted to unpredictability, to people who keep them guessing, who don't follow the script of what a typical person would do. Here's something that will blow your mind. People are constantly testing your interest level, not your competency. Most assume they're testing to see if you're man or woman enough, or if you can handle their attitude, but that's not what's happening at all. They're testing to see how much you like them. Every time they act a little cold, every time they mention another person, every time they seem unimpressed with something you did, they're gauging your reaction to see if you'll chase their validation. When you fail these tests by immediately trying to win their approval back, you're essentially telling them, "I like you more than you like me." And once they know that, the power dynamic shifts permanently in their favor. When someone perceives that your value is lower than their own, their body literally starts to reject you on a biological level. This isn't conscious, it's happening in their subconscious mind. Their brain starts sending signals that you're not genetically superior enough to be worth investing in. This manifests as a loss of sexual desire, increased irritability around you, and a general feeling that something is off about the relationship. This is why many people in relationships stop being intimate with their partners. It's not that they don't love them, it's that their biology is telling them not to invest in someone they perceive as weak or lower value. Her subconscious thinks that you became weak, that you can't stand up to them, therefore you can't stand up for them. People are survival creatures, and when they look at you, you're now a bad investment for their survival. Understanding this can be painful, but it's also liberating. When you realize that their loss of interest isn't personal, it's biological, you can start to make the changes necessary to reactivate their attraction. Here's a fascinating psychological phenomenon. When someone is uncertain about your interest level, they switch from covert to overt communication. Normally, people communicate covertly, meaning they hint at what they want rather than stating it directly. They might say, "I'm cold," instead of "Can you give me your jacket?" Or "I'm hungry," instead of "Let's go eat." But when they're worried about losing you, they switch to overt communication. They start being more direct, more affectionate, more obvious about their feelings. They'll text you things like, "I miss you so much," or "I can't wait to see you tonight." This shift happens because their hypergamous instincts are telling them that you might be higher value than they initially thought, and they need to make sure they don't lose you to someone else. When someone really likes you, they return texts on time, call you back, check in on how your day is going, and genuinely do things to make you feel like they like you. They switch to overt communication because their instinct can't stand the thought of losing high value. Here's where most dating advice gets it completely wrong. They tell you to hit the gym, make more money, dress better, and develop more skills. While these things can help, they're missing the fundamental point. You can be the most successful, attractive, well-dressed person in the world, but if you display low-value behaviors, they'll still lose interest. I've seen millionaires get dumped by people who work modest jobs because they didn't understand these psychological principles. Conversely, I've seen average people with average jobs keep beautiful partners completely obsessed with them because they understood how to maintain the proper psychological dynamic. External improvements might get you in the door, but psychological positioning is what keeps them interested long-term. Self-improvement is not the answer. Passing the interest tests is the answer. Whether you make $50,000 or $500,000 a year doesn't matter. What matters is what your behavior reveals about your value. Revealing desperate interest reveals your sexual market value. Revealing your neediness reveals what type of partner you're used to getting. This is probably the most counterintuitive part of relationship psychology. People consistently choose those who treat them worse over those who treat them better. This isn't because they enjoy being mistreated, it's because poor treatment often signals higher value. When someone is willing to risk losing you by not prioritizing your every need, it suggests that they have other options. When they're not constantly seeking your approval, it implies that they don't need your validation to feel good about themselves. These are both indicators of high value. The person who's always nice and accommodating, on the other hand, signals through their behavior that they're grateful just to be with you. They're so eager to please, so afraid of losing you, that they communicate low value in every interaction. This is why people often stay with those who treat them poorly. They have something to aspire to, and this is why they leave those who treat them well. If you treat someone well, rest assured they're going to leave you eventually. All people will leave partners who treat them well. The more dates you take them on, the more vacations you suggest, the more calls and texts you give, the more they think, "They really like me. How nice. You know what? I really don't like them." People don't fall in love with partners. They fall in love with how partners make them feel about themselves. When you make them feel like they're the prize, like they're doing you a favor by being with you, they feel powerful but not attracted. But when you make them feel like they have to earn your affection, like they're lucky to have your attention, they feel challenged and excited. This emotional state is what creates the deep, obsessive attraction that leads to genuine love. People are led by their emotions. If their emotions are signaling, "Text this person, you like them," that person is going to text you. If their emotions are signaling, "This person is low value, I don't like them anymore," they pull back. The key is to make them feel like they're constantly reaching upward to deserve your attention, but never making them feel like they can't reach it. It's a delicate balance between challenge and hope. The most attractive quality a person can have is genuine abundance. The feeling that they have multiple options and doesn't need any one person to feel complete. This isn't about actually having multiple partners, it's about the mental state of not being needy or desperate. When you have abundance, you naturally do all the right things. You don't chase, you don't overinvest, you don't sacrifice your dignity for their attention. You treat them well because you want to, not because you're afraid of losing them. This mindset is incredibly attractive because it's so rare. Most people are operating from scarcity. They're so grateful to have someone's attention that they'll do anything to keep it. The person with abundance is selective about who gets their time and energy. Not replying to one or two texts makes you attractive. You don't responding immediately makes you the high-value person without even trying. There are subtle tweaks in your behavior that position you as someone worth chasing. People are biologically attracted to partners who can lead, make decisions, and take responsibility. When you constantly seek their approval or ask them to make decisions, you're failing to fulfill this basic role. Leadership doesn't mean being controlling or domineering. It means being decisive, confident, and willing to take charge when necessary. It means having a vision for your life and inviting them to join you rather than centering your life around their preferences. For example, instead of asking, "What do you want to do tonight?" try, "We're going to try that new restaurant downtown." Instead of, "Is this okay with you?" try, "This is what we're doing." You're not being demanding, you're being decisive. When you take charge and make decisions confidently, you're giving them the gift of being able to relax and trust your judgment. This is what true leadership looks like. In any relationship, whoever is investing more emotional energy has less power. Investment can be measured in many ways. Who initiates contact more often? Who makes more effort to see the other person? Who compromises more? Who shows more emotional vulnerability first? The person who consistently invests more will eventually lose attraction from the other person. This is a fundamental law of human psychology that applies to all relationships. This doesn't mean you should never invest or show care. It means you should be strategic about when and how you invest. Let them invest in you first, then match their investment level. Don't be the one who's always reaching out, always making plans, always compromising. When the investment is balanced, both people feel valued and respected. When it's imbalanced, the lower investing person loses respect for the higher investing person. Frame control is perhaps the most important skill you can develop for maintaining attraction. Your frame is your perspective on reality, how you see yourself, the relationship, and the world around you. People are constantly testing your frame to see if you'll abandon your perspective to please them. When you consistently maintain your frame, it signals that you're a strong, confident person who knows their own value. The person with strong frame control doesn't need to argue or defend their position. They simply maintain their perspective with quiet confidence, knowing that they're being tested to see if they're strong enough to lead. This isn't about being stubborn or inflexible. It's about having a clear sense of who you are and what you stand for, and not compromising that to gain their approval. The uncomfortable reality is that love and attraction operate on different principles. Love is about care, compatibility, and commitment. Attraction is about challenge, uncertainty, and the feeling of reaching upward. Most people focus only on love, being caring, supportive, and committed. But without attraction, love means nothing. They might care about you, but they won't desire you. They might stay with you out of obligation, but they won't be passionate about you. The people who create lasting, passionate relationships are the ones who understand how to maintain both love and attraction. They're caring and supportive, but they're also challenging and unpredictable. They're committed, but they're not needy. This isn't about being cruel or manipulative. It's about understanding the psychological mechanisms that drive attraction and working with them instead of against them. The choice is yours. You can continue operating from the nice guy playbook and wonder why people keep losing interest. Or you can embrace these uncomfortable truths and start creating the passionate, devoted relationships you deserve. Stop trying to win them over and start being the kind of person they feel lucky to have won over. The difference will transform not just your dating life, but your entire relationship with attachment and intimacy. This is the psychology of attraction in its purest form. Understand it, integrate it, and watch as everything changes.